boy, just got 20 minutes into this video and realized the mic wasn't recording. Awesome. So, sorry if this one feels a little condensed or rushed. I'm going to try my best to keep it at a good pace. But yeah, crap. Oh well. You know what? We're moving forward. Hi, welcome to our next video. We're going over the Shaman. We're looking at the Shaman preview for Legion. Shamans, I think, are the one class that I feel the most for. I don't even really play them much. I goof off on an enhancement Shaman. That's about it. But Shamans have definitely gotten the short end of the straw. They've been the low end of the totem pole for a very, very long time. And hopefully with some of the changes they're bringing in for Shamans here are going to address some of that. So let's go ahead and get right in. Just for the sake of time on my own personal end here and for this video, I'm going to skip this stuff that we normally read and just kind of give you a summary of it. They didn't like the way totems were functioning, and although they are key and important to Shamans. So instead of living by the restraints they gave Shamans for all their totems and then trying to come up with mechanics so Shamans could get around those restraints and make them feel awkward and clunky, they just removed the restraints. So what that means, and I will post the link to this article as well so you guys can read it for yourself, is that totems are no longer going to be limited to dropping at the Shaman's feet. So you're going to cast the totem, you're able to put it where you want it, obviously within a certain yardage, much like totemic projection happened and worked. That's just going to be baseline now. You're going to cast a totem, you're going to drop it where you want, whether it's at your feet or X amount of yards away, around the corner, things like that. Guardian totems are no longer going to be attached to totems. Your elementals are just going to be simply guardians. So you're not going to be able to just kill the totem and then kill the guardian, which I think will add some good quality of life to Shamans. Totem health is being increased. Hopefully that's somewhere within the 5 to 10% range. 10% might be a little bit high. We'll see what health pools look like. But anywhere from the 5 to 10% range of the Shaman's health I think will be good. Because the fact that right now I can kill a totem with my hamstring on my warrior is just kind of sad. I almost feel bad doing it if it wasn't like a necessity for winning games. So sorry if you're a Shaman. Also, I think that was it. Cool. Also, Elemental and Enhancement are getting a new resource called Maelstrom, and that's going to build up as you cast certain spells. So there is all of that. Let's go ahead and just kind of jump right into the Elemental Shaman gameplay look. Elemental Shaman already have a strong thematic ability repertoire. We're retaining much of that existing gameplay in Legion while smoothing the rough edges. The previously mentioned switch to Maelstrom as a resource is most significant. Elemental Shaman will build Maelstrom through their Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, and Chain Lightning, and spend it on abilities like Shocks and Earthquake. This change also allows us to remove the cooldowns of Shocks. Very interesting. Since they instead compete for resources, Shock usage is now more flexible for Elemental Shaman, such as using more of their Maelstrom on Flame Shock to dot multiple targets. Another notable change is the return of Elemental Overlord as their mastery. Molten Earth never lived up to our hopes, being too non-interactive and confusing, and that is one I will agree with for sure. It looked cool. It's probably one of the coolest looking masteries out there, but it just was very underwhelming, and the damage wasn't quite there. So that's unfortunate, but that's the case. I just wish for Shamans, especially Elemental, because Elemental has been like the worst of the worst. Out of all the Shaman specs for years now, Elemental has definitely gotten the least love and been in the worst place. I want to see Elemental Shamans be able to cast some hardcore, legit looking spells. I mean, you're basically communing with the forces of nature, the very elements themselves. We're talking Elemental Lords here, guys like Ragnaros. A lot of these Shamans are able to communicate with elements of that nature. So you remember that like giant lightning rod that Thrall was able to basically cast in like WoD? You'd see him do it a lot. I think he did it to Garrosh, and then you saw him do it in like the WoD intro quest line, how that just spike of earth would come out and it would just like impale people and then lightning would come down. I want to know why Elemental Shamans can't cast that. Like, what reason do we have not to? Why is that not in the game yet? I don't even play an Elemental Shaman, and I want to know why is that not in the game. It's cool, and it would probably do a ton of damage, so maybe this time around in Legion we'll see it. Fingers crossed. But for Elemental Shamans, their abilities, we're looking at Lightning Bolt, which functions basically exactly the same. 40-yard range, 2-second cast, fires a bolt of lightning at the target, dealing moderate nature damage and generating 15 Maelstrom. So that's more than likely going to be your ability to spam a lot to generate the most Maelstrom, more or less. Lava Burst is a 40-yard range, 2-second cast, 8-second cooldown. Hurl molten lava at the target, dealing strong fire damage. If your Flame Shock is on the target, Lava Burst will deal 50% additional damage and generates 15 Maelstrom. Flame Shock is a 0 to 20 Maelstrom, 45-yard range, instant, sears the target with fire, causing minor fire damage, and then an additional minor fire damage every 2 seconds. Lasts 10 seconds to 30 seconds based on Maelstrom spent. So, depending on how much Maelstrom you pool into your shock spell, your Flame Shock is going to extend the duration of the dot. So, while you can spam it because it costs actually nothing, it might not be the best, though sometimes it might be worth it to just throw a quick dot up on something anyways, depending on how the playstyle is going to work out. Earth Shock is back, costs 10 to 100 Maelstrom, which makes me question and wonder what the cap on Maelstrom is. Is it 100? Is it higher? We'll see, because that might be interesting. Because Earth Shock itself was known for always being a pretty hard-hitting ability, and back in the day, it used to be an interrupt, back before they gave Shaman's Wind Shear. But it used to be your interrupt. It would do damage and interrupt, and then after that, they gave Wind Shear, and Earth Shock just turned into a big, heavy hitter. So I'm curious what the damage is going to look like, because if you can dump 100 Maelstrom, I wonder if that's going to be like, if you can pool all of your Maelstrom into one Earth Shock, just like go whoop, and just like two-shot fools. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like, but hopefully it's actually worth costing and saving up the Maelstrom for. Lava Surge is a passive. Your Flame Shock damage over time has a chance to reset the cooldown of Lava Burst and cause your next Lava Burst to be instant. So that might be another reason you want to let your Flame Shock build up so you can get the longer dot on there. The longer the dot is up, the more chances you have to proc Lava Surge. Now, I will say that I actually, and this isn't necessarily exclusively my own opinion, it is my own, but I have other people that agree with me on this and other people that align with that, and one of them is, and I'm going to be quoting Sidu here. If you don't know who Sidu is, he is a multi-rank 1 gladiator resto shaman. He's a BlizzCon champion and a big player in the WoW tournament scene, more or less. He's a very good player, pretty down-to-earth, pretty humble dude, and he just overall is one of my favorite WoW PvPers. But I do agree with his sentiment on Lava Surge, and I wish it would just be removed altogether. I think it devalues Lava Burst. And the example that was given, and I do like the example, is that imagine if Warlocks could just get free procs on Chaos Bolt, and now just the thought of that is terrifying because of how much damage Chaos Bolts do. And I mean, we only got so many spell reflects. But, you know, and so there's a cast time attached to it, and the damage is worth it for the cast time. Like that's just it. You have the hard cast time, that's the spell, and when it goes off, it does a buttload of damage. I think, honestly, Lava Burst should work the same way, especially when you get down to looking at our mastery. Having Lava Surge and Elemental Mastery, or Elemental Overload, I'm sorry, adds a little too much RNG to a class as a whole, and I want to talk about RNG more so later when I get to my Warrior critique video, when I start talking about some of the potential dangers we could see going into Legion with Warriors, and some things I would like to see changed, so that, mostly because, again, Warriors, obviously my main spec, my main class, and so I've got a little bit more critique to say about that than any other class, and as good as the Warrior changes look, there are some things that still have me a little bit concerned, but I feel like I share the same sentiment with Shamans here as well, just a little too much RNG, and I think having the Lava Surge there devalues the Lava Burst. Being able to sit there, because that's not even a long cast time, 2 seconds. Like, yeah, that's one of the more easy spells to interrupt, but eventually you're going to get one off, and it would be so very rewarding, because it's going to hit like a semi, rather than, oh, you're just stuff's proccing, so you're just throwing off free Lava Bursts. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know if you agree with me or not. Either way, it is what it is. Doesn't look like it's going anywhere. I mean, we could always be vocal about it on the beta, and hopefully Blizzard would change it, as long as not being rude and demanding it, I suppose, but it's there, and it's an option. If we want to try to protest that, I don't know. It's whatever. Additionally, to provide a glimpse of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of Elemental-specific talent. 40-yard range, instant 30-second cooldown, summons a Maelstrom totem near the target for 15 seconds that repeatedly attacks an enemy within 30 yards for moderate nature damage, and every time the Maelstrom totem attacks, it will generate 5 Maelstrom for you. So kind of a big Maelstrom generator there. Going to drop that down probably in anywhere you can get some good AoE hits off. Hunter pets, probably Demonology Warlock, stuff like that. Anytime you're playing pet classes, massive cleaves, anytime you're getting jumped, stuff like that, probably worth it. Whether or not the talent will be competitive or not, that's yet to be seen. But I do want to talk about Mastery before I completely forget about it and skip over it. With Elemental Overload back, grants a 40% with Mastery from typical gear chance for Elemental Overload to occur. Elemental Overload causes a Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, or Lava Burst spell you cast to trigger a second similar spell of the same target on the same target that causes 75% of normal damage and Maelstrom generation and no threat. So maybe, I don't know if you guys can see where I'm coming from on this one, and I might be completely wrong, and this could just be simply because I'm ignorant and don't play an Elemental Shaman, but I feel like having Lava Surge and Elemental Overload is a bit much. It's just a little too much RNG, and it's a bit much on the instant casts. I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe Shamans need it. I don't know if they could rework anything differently, but if you play a Shaman, let me know your 2 cents in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, since most of my experience with a Shaman comes on enhancement. Intense communion with fire, air, and earth and air, and water isn't exclusive to the Elemental Shaman. In many ways, enhancement Shamans similarly bond with nature and leverage its power on the battlefield. What distinguishes them is their training, and their connection with the elements is their combat methodology. The Shaman favor empowering their physical attacks with elemental energies and facing their adversaries up close. They don't shy away from the front lines, wielding magically augmented weapons, potent elemental attacks, then totems that shape the tide of battle. Enhancement Shaman's probably been one of my favorite specs since Vanilla WoW. I've always just been enamored by the Enhancement Shaman playstyle. I thought it was one of the coolest things ever. If I wasn't so attached to my warrior, I honestly say I probably would have leaned toward an Enhancement Shaman if I discovered it first. That's kind of how I feel about Enhancement Shamans. The identity of the Enhancement Shaman is cool, but we don't feel that the mechanics do well to establish that. We want this spec to be more than a melee range and elemental shaman while having a distinct battle mage feel. Enhancement's niche focuses on dishing out devastating spells and punishing strikes at melee range to destroy their enemy, rather than leaving you with a multitude of buttons, many of which are inconsequential. We're emphasizing empowering your weapon and allies in the fray. Enhancement Shaman become increasingly deadly as they build their power through Maelstrom generation. They must be careful not to let it overflow while maintaining enough to utilize their most dominant attacks at critical moments. I would really like to see them capitalize on that and turn Enhancement Shamans into not only a solid DPS, but a good support class as well, like some good buffs and things that you can throw out. And even if it was a lot of stuff that like other classes don't have, I'd like to see Shaman and Druids return back to being kind of the buff machines. Like, they have a lot of buffs that other classes just don't and can't provide. And I think that would give them a solid place and be actually in a high demand depending on the PvP comp and obviously rating as well. To give you an idea of the Enhancement Shaman in action, here's a basic look at their core combat abilities. Rockbiter is back. 10-yard range, instant, assault your target with earthen power, dealing moderate nature damage and generating 15 Maelstrom. Flame Tongue is a 10-yard range, instant, 12-second cooldown. Scorch your target with fiery power, dealing moderate fire damage and enhancing your weapons. Each of your weapon attacks cause up to minor additional fire damage based on weapon speed, last 16 seconds. So these two are... Flame Tongue is going to have, obviously, the cooldown. Rockbiter, you're probably able to spam, be more of a filler almost. It's kind of interesting that they're bringing back Rockbiter and Flame Tongue. I kind of like the idea, though, because those are just kind of fun, essential, quintessential, old-school Shaman abilities. But I do like being able to empower your weapons again in this aspect and kind of roll that over, keep that rolling. The additional fire damage, it sounds like a neat concept, I suppose. Of course, based on weapon speed, so I'm imagining slower weapons are going to be better. Unfortunately, this does not mean that the two-handed dream is back because, of course, we're getting our artifact weapons and we're already knowing for a fact that we are dual-wielding. So, rip two-handed Enhancement Shaman. Wind Fury. Passive. Each of your main hand attacks has a 7% chance of triggering 3 extra attacks dealing minor physical damage. That's kind of crazy. Lava Lash is a 30 Maelstrom, 30 or melee range instant. Charge your offhand weapon with lava and strike your target dealing strong fire damage. So it looks like it's going to be one of your bigger abilities still. However, Storm Strike is 60 Maelstrom, melee range instant with a 16-second cooldown. Energize your weapon with lightning and deliver a massive blow to your target dealing heavy physical damage. So it looks like Storm Strike is going to be one of your bigger hitting spells. It's going to be kind of your big, almost like consider like Warrior Mortal Strike. Well, that's going to be your Storm Strike. It is going to be your big hitting spell, more or less. Maelstrom Weapon is a passive. When you deal damage with a melee weapon, you generate 5 Maelstrom. Okay. So basically, whether it's probably a special attack or an auto attack, you're just building Maelstrom. Apparently, that's what shamans look like when they hack away. Storm Fury is a passive. Each of your attacks has a 2% chance to cost Storm Fury, resetting the cooldown on Storm Strike and causing your next Storm Strike to cost 50% less Maelstrom and trigger no cooldown. Alright, I mean, I can get behind at least one RNG effect in every class. I suppose it's kind of a fun thing when it happens, as long as it's not your whole class isn't basically run by RNG. Mastery is enhanced elements, increases the chance for Storm Fury and Wind Fury to trigger by 5% with Mastery from typical gear, and increases all fire and nature damage done by 40%. So pretty gnarly. So the more Mastery you have, the more chances you have for Storm Fury and Wind Fury to proc. I'm curious if they're gonna put a soft cap on that, as far as like once you get enough, like you don't benefit from it anymore. Because I mean, obviously there's really no hard cap on it, but I'm curious if the soft cap will exist. Because depending on how Mastery stacks and how they tune that could get out of hand pretty quickly, and all of a sudden we're going to see enhancement just going crazy, which I'm not going to lie, might be kind of fun. But yeah, I'm curious how they're going to balance on this, and of course time will tell as Legion Beta rolls out. Additionally, to provide a glimpse at how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of an enhancement-specific talent. Sundering, I'm listening, 60 Maelstrom, instant, 20-second cooldown. Shatter a line of earth before you, causing strong physical damage and knocking enemies to the side. I'm noticing a lot of these style of attacks coming in Legion. Death Knights have one, Mages are getting one, now Shamans are getting one. I'm hoping that with Warriors, Dragon's Roar is actually good again. I was thinking about that the other day. I was actually driving down the freeway and daydreaming about Dragon's Roar. It's weird, I know. But I was just like, man, I miss that ability. I just do. And I want a cool effect, and I want like the earth to crack around me. I want lava to come flying out or something. I don't know what it is, but I want Dragon's Roar back. But Sundering sounds cool. I'm curious how the knockback is going to work. Is it actually going to push them to the side? Because I'm thinking Arenas, Ring of Valor, I think it is. Or maybe I always forget the name of the arenas, but the one with the bridge on it. Ring of Blood, Ring of Valor, one of the two. Like knocking people actually off those bridges on either side just sounds kind of cool, especially because it's an AOE. Like for Warriors, you get Siegebreaker. Now that's a nice little golf club swing where you just kind of aim it and swing and you knock people off, which is kind of cool. But Sundering I could see being pretty gnarly if you're able to like knock people off the sides. Like you're facing down the bridge and you're just walking towards your target. There's like dudes in your way. You're just like, get out of my way. You just knock them off, pull like a Moses and split the Red Sea, and all of a sudden everybody goes with it. That just sounds like stuff like that. I'm just like, that sounds cool, and that makes that spell sound fun to use. So I'm liking where they're going with some of these abilities. I'm not gonna lie. Overall, I'm definitely curious to try out enhancement, and I feel like the way they're presenting it, as long as it stays strong and competitive, and taking a look at what the talents and abilities look like, definitely makes it a contender for an alt in Legion. I'm not gonna lie. Restoration. Some shaman find a serene affinity for the restorative properties of water. These shaman do not necessarily seek the light or turn to the divine, yet they feel a profound spiritual connection with the source from which all mortal life took root. So strong is their connection with water that the shaman is able to restore life and heal afflictions. They balance with this command of the other elements, finding harmony in nature and purifying their allies as a tidal surge washes across a sandy shore. It's so serene and soothing. I love it. Restoration mechanics are informed well by the themes of the spec, and we want to avoid disrupting what healers already like about it. What has changed has primarily been in terms of tweaking their gameplay in more fun directions. Now, I remember for a time, Restoration Shamans used to be able to be pretty aggressive. Like, they used to be able to push up into the fight and occasionally be pretty offensive along with defensive well. But right now, I feel like Resto Shamans have to play very, very defensively and very cautiously. Like, I feel like almost more than any other healer, as good as Resto Shamans can be, Because I fought some terrifyingly good restoration shamans, and I'm like, I have no idea how I lost to that guy, but he just kicked my butt and he's a healer. But overall, I feel like the decisions that restoration shamans make are more critical than any other healer. Shamans have always been pretty dependent as far as who they take with them into battle. They're very good and they're very comp reliant depending on who they play with. It's like playing as a priest. You're very reliant on who you're playing with. You need someone that can administer a lot of control, which is why rogues and priests work so well together. It's why shamans and warriors work so well together, because warriors can put a lot of good pressure out and peel for the shaman. But I would like to see resto shamans get to a place where they don't have to play so cautiously and timidly. I'd like to be able to see resto shamans push up and be a little more aggressive and actually change the tide of battle in that aspect. And I just feel like that would be more fun, because nobody really wants to play the pillar game. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just can't be fun. That can't be fun as a healer. I think that's why I always like the paladin, because I feel like I can get out and actually in the fight, and I don't have to hide behind a pillar the whole time. Well, there are sometimes it's necessary, but I just hate the idea of having to sit the pillar the entire game. That just doesn't sound fun. So hopefully they're able to change some of this stuff up for resto shamans. There's now slightly more emphasis on targeted healing and slightly less on chain heal spam, which we've significantly improved their talents, offering more impactful and varied options. Additionally, restoration gains the most from the removal of totem restrictions. And I think that's appropriate, and I think that's actually how it should work. I think resto should have the most range when it comes to totems to use. To give you an idea of the restoration shaman in action, here's a basic look at their core combat abilities. Healing wave, 2.1% mana, 40-yard range, 2.5 second cast. A slow but effective wave of healing energy that restores a moderate amount of a friendly target's health. Healing Surge is a 4.1% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast. A quick but expensive surge of healing energy that restores a moderate amount of a friendly target's health. Chain Heal is a 5.6% mana, 40-yard range, 2.5 second cast. Heals the friendly target for a moderate amount, then jumps to heal the most injured nearby party or raid members. Healing is reduced by 30% after each jump. Heals 4 total targets. Riptide is a 1.5% mana, 40-yard range, instant 6-second cooldown. Restorative waters wash over a friendly target, healing them for a moderate amount and an additional moderate amount over 18 seconds. So it puts the initial amount plus a hot on them. Healing Rain is a 4.3% mana, 40-yard range, 2-second cast, 10-second cooldown. Blanket the target area in Healing Rains, restoring a moderate amount of health up to 6 allies in the area over 10 seconds. Healing Stream Totem is a 1.7 mana, instant 30-second cooldown. Summons a water totem at the feet of the shaman that heals an injured party or raid member within 40 yards for a minor amount every 2 seconds, lasts 15 seconds. I'm really hoping that the resource change for elemental and enhancement, while resto is still sitting on mana, depending on what mana pools look like, because it sounds like they're getting back towards making mana a little more consequential. I hope that this doesn't... I hope that shamans are in a rough spot where they're going as resto, and I hope that it doesn't feel like rest or enhancement and elemental almost get a cast whatever they want for free because of all the procs and the free cast stuff, whereas with resto I'm just seeing a lot of hard cast stuff. I mean, there's a couple instances there, and of course we'll have to wait and see what the talents look like and what the artifact weapons and the relics look like, but I'm hoping resto doesn't get screwed in the casting game here. Tidal Waves, when your Chain Heal or Riptide, you gain the Tidal Waves effect, which reduces the cast time of your next healing wave by 40% or increases the critical strike chance of your, or critical effect chance, I should say, of your next healing surge by 40%, stacks up to 2 times. So you have a choice between the two, and your Mastery's Deep Healing increases the potency of your healing spells by up to 60% based on the current health level of your target. Lower health targets are healed for more. That's interesting. So depending on how low your targeted healing, your healing is, it's going to get healed for more. So seeing that Mastery playing into emphasizing targeted healing more rather than spamming Chain Heal, which is interesting. It's kind of underwhelming, I think, compared to other healer like specialties and masteries and other classes. Especially even compared to elemental and enhancement. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't play a Resto Shaman. But if you do, please let me know if I'm missing something here. But I just feel like I'm scared for Shamans that they're going to get left behind in Legion. And that makes me sad, because Shamans have the potential to be one of the absolute coolest classes in the entire game. Additionally, to provide a glimpse at how some talents may build upon this, here's one example of a restoration-specific talent. Wellspring is a 2.4% mana, 30-yard range, 1.5-second cast, 12-second cooldown. Create a surge of water that flows forward, healing all friendly targets in a wide arc in front of you for a strong amount. Oh, that's kind of cool. So, I'm curious if it's going to be almost like just kind of a cone in front of you. Think like Cone of Cold, but just healing. Or if it's going to be like a wave that actually rushes out from the Shaman, and anybody caught in its way is going to get healed. I wonder how wide that arc is going to be too. I mean, that'll be dependent. That's more, yet to be seen. I mean, I'm sure that's what everybody's asking, so it's not exactly a smart question. But for a strong amount, that's promising. 1.5-second cast isn't too bad either. I mean, that's still interruptible, but at the same time, that's something that it's able to be cast. You're able to actually get it off in PvP. And I'm of course curious how that's going to work in PvP. Being able to like cast stuff like that is kind of cool, especially if you can line of sight stuff pretty easily. Like you can be able to cast it at your friends who are right in front of you, but the enemy is over here behind a pillar, so he can't quite interrupt you, kind of stuff. Kind of cool. So some cool concepts, I think. Definitely want to give the Shaman a look in Legion, and I will be if I get into beta. And of course, I'm hoping that all these changes and things go into effect during the pre-patch, so that we can get a chance to mess around with some of these classes and figure out what we want to play coming in Legion. But overall, I think Shaman are definitely, just with all the changes coming in, and then it feels like Resto is getting the least amount of changes, more or less. I feel like they could go either way. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Shamans more than any other class that I don't play. Just to kind of see where they end up, because I'm hoping the best for them, but I don't know. We'll find out. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do play a Shaman or just have any input at all on Shamans, throw it out there. Want to hear from you guys, want to get the discussion going, all that good stuff. That's the point of these videos. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a share if you think of someone who might enjoy watching it as well. But that's going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.